Hey, what's up, guys? Welcome to the Walkshow podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in. Today's episode, we've got a special guest all the way from Atlanta, Georgia. His name's Jamison Smallwood, and he actually hosts his own show called Culture and Conversations. Jamison's just a really, really nice, warm, intelligent guy that's kind of got a similar objective, I think, with his podcast as I do with this one, which is really just to have some interesting conversations and try and share those, with the audience. So again, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy. As always, today's show is produced, music and artwork by Misha Zarins. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Walkshow podcast. This is your host, Walker Neer. Today we have a really special treat. I recently went to Orlando, Florida for a podcast conference called PodFest. And there I met a good friend of mine who is the host of his own podcast called Culture and Conversations, and that is Mr. Jamison Smallwood. Thank you so much for joining the show today, Jamison.
Hey, Walker. It's a pleasure to be here chatting with you, man, catching back up after the conference and also talking in front of your audience, man.
Yeah, man. Well, I, again, really appreciate you taking the time to join us on the episode today. I haven't actually talked about PodFest at all on the podcast yet. So to kind of give people just a quick rundown of how we met, PodFest was a 3-day conference down in Orlando. That was just all about podcasting. I think Jameis and I would both agree it was a awesome experience. We had a ton of fun, met a lot of cool people. For me personally, I went there by myself and was kind of nervous about, meeting people and getting in the mix. And I actually got there a day early, and they did a little mixer event for people who got there early on the night before it all started. And I was sitting in a restaurant at the hotel that the conference was at, and Jamison walks in, and I see he has the podcast lanyard on, and then I heard him say something to like the server or something about podcasting. And so I tried to play it cool, and I was like, "Oh, hey, are you here with the podcast thing?" Which clearly he was. And he said, "Yeah," and we started talking a little bit, and then I think I rudely invited myself to join him at his table.
It wasn't rude at all, man. It wasn't rude at all.
But he was gracious enough to have me. And honestly, I told Jamison this at the event, and I don't mean to sound mushy or anything, but Jamison really just set the tone for the entire conference for me, because he was the first person that I really talked to or engaged. He just, he made me feel like I was welcome and I was a part of it. And, here's a guy that's been doing a show for a long time and I'm brand new. And he immediately was willing to talk to me about it and engaging. And that was really how the vibe of the whole conference felt for me. So thank you very much for that, Jamison. You really set the weekend off on a great note, and it just carried through the whole time. And yeah, thanks again for joining the show today.
Hey, yeah, I mean, you had the right mindset when you walked up to me and you were like, "Hey, I'm here at the podcast conference too. Would you like some company for dinner?" And I wish I had been more, open-minded at the time about networking, because I came there too by myself to Orlando, and that was a Wednesday. The Wednesday was before the conference started, and so I just went into Cooper's Hawk, which is the restaurant we were always eating at, because it was right there on the premises of the hotel. Mm-hmm. And you just struck up a conversation with me, and I was really receptive to it, because I'm like, yeah, that's why I'm here. I'm here to meet people and get to know fellow podcasters, and I had a great time just with that initial conversation we had. And yeah, it was great bumping into you every day and hanging out and going to different sessions and seeing each other as we talk about your podcasting. That was really cool.
Yeah, man. Yeah, it was a super cool event. I've never been to a conference like that. I've been to like single day event conferences that are either sales pitches or they're exclusively vendors that are, trying to sell things.
Gotcha. Yeah.
But I'd never been to something like more like trade shows, I guess, but I'd never been to something like that. And I was kind of skeptical, and man, I mean, we won free tickets. So also that Wednesday night, we won free tickets after winning his trivia game. Jameis and I were on the same team. So I'll be back next year for sure, because it was worth it.
Oh yeah. I mean, I forgot about that whole part of it too. We didn't even talk about that when I did I did the recap on my show, a little small mini recap. I didn't even talk about it. And yeah, you're right. We the first night we were hanging out at the mixer they did and we were sitting at the table with two other gentlemen. And I would, and sorry guys for me not remembering your name, but I've got a video I'm going to post, I promise. And, you know, we all just kind of formed this makeshift ragtag trivia team. And next thing you know, we were like, okay, well, you know, we don't really know anything about trivia like that. We don't play trivia that intensely, it didn't seem. So, but then as the show went on, and we got deeper into the trivia show, we were in first place,
Mm-hmm.
and it got real competitive towards the end. And what was it? What was the episode? I mean, the question we thought we got wrong was which city has the largest population, and it was we
In
automatically.
Florida.
Yeah, in Florida, yes. We thought it was Miami, but we had already selected Jacksonville. And we
Right.
were the only team to have selected Jacksonville out of the whole set of teams in the trivia competition.
Yeah.
And we're sitting there kicking ourselves and saying, "Hey, you know, man, I can't believe we didn't. I can't believe we picked the wrong city." And lo and behold, it was actually the right answer. So we got the correct answer out of all those teams, even though we thought we had picked the wrong answer.
Yeah, no, for sure. And dude, I Googled it later and it's by a huge margin. Jacksonville's close to 1 million and Miami's like 400,000.
Oh
Like,
wow,
so it's
wow.
significant. Yeah.
Wow, it's not even like it's not even like
No.
100,000 of. It's like
No.
twice as many
Two
people get.
Miamis, right.
Yeah, man, that's insane.
But yeah, I will say, like, you know, I've just started with this whole podcasting thing, and I won free tickets from my media host Buzzsprout down to Podfest, and then the first night to meet you and have this great meeting, and then immediately go into this trivia thing that I'm totally skeptical of,
Sure.
and to win free tickets again, like, you know, on the one hand, I don't think that that probably anyone's looking out for me, but on the other hand, like it felt like a little bit of providence or something, you know, like I'm supposed to be here, like this is supposed to work out like it is. So it was a cool feeling for sure.
Yeah, no doubt, man. It's it's just one of those things where if you take opportunities like that seriously and open yourself up to them, then the possibilities begin to emerge about the connections and the networking and stuff like that. So
Yep, that's for sure. So that's kind of how we met. Was at Podfest. And yeah, so like I said earlier, Jamison has his own show called Culture and Conversations, which I highly recommend. You guys should go check it out. It's on all the podcast networks. He's doing live streams on Facebook, so you can catch him there. He's on Instagram, you can catch him there. But you should definitely. You're on YouTube also, is that right?
yeah, I do post content on YouTube as well. The channel still needs more subscribers, so please subscribe. But
Yep.
everything is culture and conversations, so you can go and find the YouTube channel. You just have to scroll. I can't give you like the nice, pretty YouTube link because they make me get 1,000 subscribers before they'll let me name my channel. So
Gotcha. Well, that's all good. Well, I'll definitely I'll get the link from YouTube and put it in the show notes for this whenever we post it, so that way people can find it there as well.
cool.
So you've been doing your podcast for a little over a year now, is that right?
Oh yeah, it started back in January 2018. I think I dropped my first episode. I don't have to think; I can tell you right now. I dropped the first episode on January 5th, 2018.
Okay. And so, you know, obviously you've got a really good voice for this kind of thing, but beyond just your natural talent, what kind of inspired you to want to start the podcast?
That's a good question, man. I always answer this question, and the answer does evolve a little bit as I think about it. But in general, Walker, what happened was my timeline on social media, Facebook is where I had my largest following of friends. Everybody saw how I was engaging and stirring the pot, and I'll make something, and post it, and it's a provocative thought or a provocative statement, or I would say something inflammatory, just poking the bear a little bit, having some fun on social media, and because I look at how the culture we live in operates. I look at it from a lot of different angles. I'm a person of faith, so as a Christian, I see things a certain way, but also as a guy, I see things a certain way, and also just how my brain works with the logic and everything else, right? The things that make us who we are, our worldview, and it got to the point where people were just like, you should do a podcast. I can remember the post started to emerge, like, man, you should really start doing a podcast, taking your ideas that you've got and how you're sharing stuff on social media and turning it into that podcast format. And I think people have naturally sort of started to gravitate over to consuming more and more podcasts, Walker, because
Hmm.
it's a new media platform, even though they've been around for years with the original iPod. But it's now becoming a larger platform because larger media talents are bringing their presence and their following there. So I think that's why it was on the tip of everybody's mind. So I had done some podcasting before where I just created a simple RSS feed and using Buzzsprout. That's who I host with as well. And I just threw it out there on the internet because it was for my church work. But I had never done it. I had done a focused show like what I'm doing now, and with culture and conversations. So when I took all of that encouragement and I started looking at my technology background because I'm a software engineer by day. I started to look at the sort of the spiritual perspective I operate with as a Christian, and just how I have to understand, I think, a little bit about human nature to kind of figure out how I fit into the world with my faith. But then at the same time, my social media following and just the engagement I had there, I felt like that was the perfect intersection of things to try to produce a podcast, and that's where culture and conversations was birthed from.
Gotcha. That's a cool story. I had not quite the same the same intro for myself. I mean, I did. It was friends kind of saying, "Hey, you should think about doing that." But I didn't have a background in doing it before, and
Yeah.
and it's interesting that you use social media was kind of the I don't even know what word to use, but kind of the thing that showed you that, hey, maybe you can build an audience and people are interested in what you're talking about or the ideas that you're putting out there.
Yeah, it was weird because I don't see myself as ever being internet famous.
Right.
I'm not trying to be. I'm not one of those people. And I really was just taking my personality and sort of putting a little spice on it, if you will, and sharing it on social media because I don't feel like social media is a real place to begin with, right? Like I feel like I mean, don't get me wrong, I feel like it has real consequences when you post certain things and you say
Hmm.
certain things on the internet, but in terms of the construct, it's not real. It's like a virtual world. So, I feel like I can hack that because I realize it's not real. And I kept seeing how people were being moved by certain things, whether people thought things were hilarious or people got angry at certain things, And I said, well, I can play with this, and if I can, hit those levers in people with, my little piffy comments and status updates, then I wonder if I took my time and actually focused in on producing a show, a podcast, could I do the same thing? And so far, I think I have. I think I've been able to do the same thing so far.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting because I was a later adopter of social media. I didn't jump in right when Facebook and all that came out.
Sure.
Only actually have ever tweeted a couple of times until I started the podcast, and now I tweet whenever it comes out so that my 10 followers can know.
Your tens of
Um,
listeners, your
yeah.
tens of listeners. Yes.
but but yeah, I actually kind of went another direction with it where I got on social media, and then I worked at a place where I saw a guy get fired for a picture he took at work and posted on social media.
Wow.
And he got fired not even because the content of the picture was offensive, but because you weren't allowed to have your phone out on the production floor of this call center that I was working at.
Wow.
And so they knew that if he took the picture, then he must have had his
Had his
phone
phone
out.
out.
So then they fired him for it.
Oh man.
And so I just changed the name immediately, and I was like, Walker Neer doesn't have a Facebook, so I can say anything, and if you want to come at me, I will all day
Yeah. Yeah.
deny that Walker Neer has one.
That's it.
Which now that I've said this publicly is all for naught, I guess. But
You just snitched on yourself, Walker.
yeah,
That's what
I
happened.
just dry snitched. That's all bad. It happens, I guess. But anyway, yeah, so that's cool that you were able to take that platform and kind of go a different way with it. I I've done, I've done stand-up comedy and that kind of stuff in the past, so that's kind of my only real public performance thing that I've done prior to this. But yeah, that's cool how you started the show. So you said that you're a software engineer by trade.
Hmm.
So that was one of the things I was gonna have you talk about, but we're good there. So listening to your show, I think that the way that you do your show is really cool because you've got your, I guess what we'll call the mainline episodes that are just the culture and conversation episodes.
That's it.
Uh,
Yeah.
and those look like those are anywhere between, I don't know if I saw anything below 50 minutes and then, close up to a little bit over an hour maybe, but
Yeah.
good
They're,
amount of content.
well, yeah, they range, to your point, they range probably from about anywhere from around, I think the smallest I've ever done is around like 35 minutes or so.
Okay.
And yeah, there's some episodes that are well over an hour. And, but usually on average, it's around 45 minutes.
Yeah. So I've listened to a couple of your episodes. I've listened to actually a couple of the mainline ones, I should say, and then I've
Sure.
listened to some of the other ones as well. But just to give my audience a kind of an idea of it, it's very similar to this show insofar as just that it doesn't seem like you are afraid to go to any topic or have any kind of conversation, right? So
Yeah, that's true, man. Like I feel like I think I'm gonna include you in this statement. I feel like we're smart enough to talk about a number of topics. I feel like I have a breadth of knowledge where I may not be a master of every topic, but I have enough information to at least begin to broach the conversation. And so that's why I talk about everything. I mean, just to give your audience an example, I've talked about things as uh, personal as infertility, trying to have children, and I had a guest on who shared her experience with that. That was episode 11, in my hip butt, and my friend Amanda Thomas, she came onto the show, and she shared her family's very personal and very private struggle with conceiving children. And it gave me a chance to kind of leverage some of my life experiences with that and share that with my audience. And that episode is one of my best most downloaded episodes ever because it's so real, it's so visceral when you hear her talking about
mhm.
just the ups and downs, right? But then there's other episodes where, like for instance, I talked with one of my friends who was on my show, episode 15. She is a teacher in South Georgia who helps older, middle-aged, adults who didn't graduate from high school get their GEDs. So I wanted to talk to her about that process. And one of the great stories in that conversation, Walker, was that she was helping a gentleman learn to read better because he wanted to understand how to read his Bible better. Just really simple human interest kind of things. Like, he just wants to read better so he can go to church and read the Bible. Like, I feel like it was a really noble story. So, that's why I enjoy my show, because it gives me a chance to talk about so many different aspects of the human existence. And I just share how I see it through my lens and what I think about when I hear certain stories and certain topics.
Yeah. Yeah, no, and you do a great job of that. So the one of the episodes I listened to, and I think you have two of them, and I think I listened to the second one, but it's an episode about gardening.
Yeah,
And I
yeah,
think you did one with like your friend Neil, I think, and
that's it.
then and
Yeah.
I actually didn't catch that one though. I listened to the one that came out after that. There was actually just you, so you didn't have a guest on that one.
No, no, I just talked about me. Yeah.
And I gotta say, man, like just so you know, the effect that you can have just from recording yourself talking like that for just I don't know, it's maybe an hour, maybe not even quite an hour.
Hmm.
Um, I have never been a gardener, and I kind of hate physical labor, which most of my friends know very well.
I hate it too, man.
Yeah. But my mom has been a gardener for a really long time. In the last few years, she hasn't been into it as much. And so I was listening to your show, and so everyone should go listen to it. So I don't mean to spoil too much, but the general gist of it is that Jameson was going through some stuff in life and decided he was going to make this garden, and really shares some really meaningful life lessons that he kind of took away from gardening. And it got me to thinking, and it actually made me think, like, I want to start a garden because just like
Mm.
you talked about, I cook. um, I want fresh produce. And so at first I was thinking I would do it at my house, and then I thought, you know what, my mom already has raised beds built, and
Yep.
and she hasn't been into it these last few years. So I hit her up and was like, hey, maybe we do a garden at your place, and I'll do the manual labor, even though I hate it. I'll redo the dirt and plant the stuff and whatever. I don't live, there obviously. So she might have to do some of the watering on a daily basis, unless we get one of the timers that you suggested.
Yep. Yep.
But yeah, man, like just from listening to that show, like I was, that day I went and pitched my mom on, hey, why don't we make a garden? She was into it. And so, yeah, we're now planning to start a garden, this year. We're going to grow some hot season stuff, tomatoes and, peppers and and then squash.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah. That's pretty much what I'm growing in my garden this year. That's the plan. So,
yeah.
but it just is. I mean, that's why I love the platform, because, people see my garden and they see I share that on social media as well. And, I do it because I love the experience of getting out there and seeing nature in a cultivated way. But to your point, I was going through things in life. I'm a divorcee, so I talk about how that kind of helped me begin to put my life in order post divorce, and it just gave me a real sense of calm, and it gave me something to work on other than sitting around the house, being upset and angry at people. So yeah, I'm glad that it touched you in a way where, you decided to reach out to your mom and say, hey, let's do a garden. That's a really cool bit of feedback there, man. I'm gonna share that with my audience the next time I have a chance to chat with them about it.
Yeah,
So.
man, for sure. Yeah, no, it was cool. And just to give a tidbit, like the thing that, I mean, all of it was interesting, and you definitely didn't make the labor sound fun. You also didn't sound whiny about it, though. You just made it sound like matter of fact, like, hey, this is what has to be done.
Yeah, that's what. You got to move the dirt, man. You got to move the dirt.
Right.
So.
And but the thing that you said that resonated with me the most was you said that the garden taught you that, or at least reinforced, it's probably something that you already knew, but taught you that that not everything is perfect. And you were talking about in the context of like you're using organic fertilizers and organic things in the soil, and I don't even know all the different terms of stuff but in the reason being that you don't get the full yield out of it, because if you used a bunch of pesticides and a bunch of toxins, then less animals or insects or whatever would get into it, but then you're also toxifying it for yourself.
Exactly.
And so in order to have this kind of healthy environment, you have to be willing to accept that you're not going to get 100% of it. And it's not just yours, because now you've got it out in the world, and you're going to have to let the world kind of take part in that also.
Exactly. That is probably the most pivotal piece of information in that episode for me. That's like one of those personal breakthroughs in life. And that's why I thought it was a good topic to share with my audience, and hopefully your audience as they go and listen to that episode, because, we all struggle with trying to get the most out of life, and we always want the most out of life. And, but the thing is, sometimes to get the most, you have to create a really toxic environment to get the most out of life for yourself as a singular person. And if you approach life with a more of an open heart for sharing, collaboration, kind of going back to the Podfest situation where we met up down there, and just being willing to give of yourself, not all of yourself, but some of yourself to others, then you find that you have more of what you need and more of what you want for yourself. I don't mean to sound all metaphysical and woo woo, but
nope. Go for it. Go for it. That's who I am.
Yeah. But I really believe that that's just demonstrated consistently over and over again in my life, that if I'm willing to share, then I usually have more of what I need for myself.
Yeah. That's, the more you give, the more you receive, kind of thing, right? It's that same kind of sentiment.
Sure.
So it's definitely not, it's not something that we've never heard before. But like I said, man, the way that you positioned it in that show, and just the way you tied the whole episode together with that kind of lesson, just really was profound, despite it being an idea that we've heard before. So props to you on that, man. That's good stuff. I also listened to the Afro Swimmers episode.
Cool.
which I think is the most recent one that you've got uploaded.
Yes.
I will in vain say that you do give me a shout out in that. So all of my audience should go listen to that so they can hear me getting praised. I mean, who doesn't enjoy that?
Yeah.
I'm kidding. I'm
No,
kidding.
no,
But
no. It's but that's one of the cool things about having a podcast is that you can just share your audience with other people
hmm
and once again, right? Not trying like hey, there's a lot of hours in a day. There's a lot of time that people need to listen to podcasts and fill their work week and work commute up with great podcasts. So why am I trying to keep, my audience over here in my little bubble? Like, hey, you guys go check out Walker's podcast. If you hear something you like, then that's a great place for you to hang out and listen to his life one of the things that made me really shout you out was your episode you did about the dogs that you knew, and I thought that was a great episode because I've had two dogs in my life that I knew, and
hmm
and then they came to mind instantly when you started talking about it. But also at the same time, you just talked about not just the dogs, but also what was going on in your life when the dogs were in your life, and I thought that was really insightful and clever. And I thought it was just a really well done episode where I got sucked in. I was like, man, this is the perfect this is the perfect kind of chill thing to listen to in the background. You have a great
Right.
voice for podcasting, and I thought the stories were very personal but not not in a way that left you saying, oh man, I know too much about Walker. But it was just like, oh, this is very relatable. This is
Right.
perfect. So I enjoyed that a lot. So
Well, that's very, very generous of you. I appreciate that. But so to go back to what I kind of started and then segued off entirely, but Jameson Show again, culture and conversations. So it's got the mainline show that I kind of described. So the two episodes I've just talked about are kind of in that category, if you will.
yeah.
But then you've got some subcategories of shows, which was kind of an idea that I've bounced around, and now seeing how you've done it, I kind of have an idea of an outline for how that looks. Um, but from what I've seen, you've got small bites, matinee conversations, and then small talk. Is there any other subsections or sub shows to culture and conversations?
No, that's it. Well, you said small bites, small talk. Do you say small
Mm-hmm.
talk?
Yep, yep.
Yeah, small bites, small talk, and matinee conversations. Yeah. So shouting out my buddy, his name is Tyler Shorter. Tyler and you have something in common. He also did stand up comedy for a little bit.
Okay.
And so he has a podcast and he's had a podcast in the past and he's working on reviving his podcast. And his new podcast, hopefully, once he gets it produced, is going to be called The Shorter Hour.
Okay.
And so he came on to the show and we started talking about movies and we just have a really good rapport. So we started doing matinee conversations, and because his show was called at the time Matinee Myths, where he talked about movies and the issues historically with that the movies presented and how they were accurate or inaccurate.
Oh, okay.
And so I said, well, that's perfect. And I talk about movies sometimes, throughout the course of my shows. And so I was like, well, why don't we kind of line up and do a show called Matinee Conversations? And that's what we did. So we did that for a while, and it's kind of cool right now. But I know all I've got to do is call them up and say, "Hey, man, let's do another episode."
Right.
And but yeah, so but the other episodes that you mentioned are still very much alive episodes right now. Small Talk is behind the scenes conversations where for instance, you and I chit chatted a little bit before we started recording. Well, I would
Mm-hmm.
record that, and whatever candidness came out of that wasn't related to the topic at hand, it might be just good guy talk, or it might just be us reflecting on Podfest, or you talking about me telling you about the dog I had, right? And I would take
Right.
that content and just put it out there because I'm like, well, I recorded it. Somebody might be interested in it, and surprisingly, sure enough, people love it. People love those episodes because they get a chance to get to know me a little bit more than just in the box of an episode. Because sometimes the episode topic is so much about my guests, I don't really shine through. And I feel like the audience deserves to get to know me. I know that sounds a little self-centered, but
No, that's true.
I think they want to know the guests, right? So same thing with you. Like, I think as long as you continue to build your show, you should always include stuff where the guest has a chance to get to know Walker and connect with you, and they can understand the person that they're listening to in the show. And so that's small talk. And then small bites, those are restaurant reviews. So sure enough, I'm going to review Cooper's Hawk, where
Yeah.
we ate at.
Yep.
And I talk about, just briefly for like about 10 minutes, the different places that I eat at around the city of Atlanta, and also in my travels, like when I went down to Orlando, for instance. So yeah, that's what I do. And I feel like it just gives value. I feel like I have a little bit more to my life than just sitting down talking to people. And maybe a little bit too much of inside baseball here. But there's a strategy to it too, as a podcaster, especially if you have an interview based show. You may not be able to book people, and you need to be able to have content to help you survive the lulls in your booking schedule. So small bites, small talk, matinee conversations, any of the content that I produce like that, it's designed to sometimes give me a break where I can go and still schedule more people and get the pipeline of guests and stuff populated. So that's the whole strategy behind it right there.
Nice. Okay. So yeah. So to be clear, I didn't tell Jameson I was going to do this ahead of time at all, but I'm gonna ask him a little bit about one of the Small Bites episodes because I listened to it, and it's
Okay.
not from a critical standpoint at all. But I want you to elaborate on it a bit if you would indulge me.
Sure.
So I listened to the one where you went to Big Nick's in Valdosta, Georgia.
Yep.
Yep. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So the way that you do the ratings is you give a certain number of bites, and like 3 bites out of 5 stars, or 4 bites, or not 5 stars, 5 bites.
Yes. Bites.
But yeah, that kind of a rating system, like 1 through 5.
Mm-hmm.
So you describe Big Nick's food, and I would love all of that food. That sounds delicious. I was not mad at any of that, and you said the service was super good. Everyone was really friendly, even if they were having a bad day. You couldn't really tell.
Sure.
And you said I mean, I don't know that you spoke to price, but it didn't sound like it was an overly expensive place. Like, it sounded like you got a good value, like good amount of food, good quality for a good price. And the only thing that I heard you knock on it really was that the creativity of the food was not really, there wasn't anything that was really brand new there. They're kind of doing stuff that's already out.
Sure.
But it only got 3.25 bites out of 5 bites. And so I was just curious, what would it take for someone to get 5 bites from the illustrious Jamison Smallwood?
That's a good question. So, yeah. So I think if I remember correctly, it was 3.5 bites.
Okay.
Good.
I'm probably, that's good.
And we call it half bite. We call it half bite a nibble. So
Okay.
it's kind of keeping with the whole bite motif.
Here I am ruining the brand. That's on me.
No, it's cool. It's cool. So what does it take to get 5?
Right.
I'll tell you about a place I just went to. This was an exclusive. This hasn't even come out yet on the episode yet. This place is called Yakitori let me not butcher the name. Yakitori let me look it up right now. People are like, what? It's called Yakitori. Yeah. Yakitori Jinbei. That's what I'm trying to say. Yakitori Jinbei.
I don't know that word either, so.
Yeah. It's a spot here in Smyrna, Georgia. And we walk in, and I was there meeting a food influencer who goes by the name of Foodie Cutie on Instagram. And her name is Ashley Stewart. And anyway, we're sitting down because it was her birthday weekend, and we wanted to kind of catch up. She had been on my show previously because she's a chef, and she was just talking about her love for food on my show, and we decided to do some content together around her reviewing a restaurant and kind of sharing her taste in food. And so we also wanted to celebrate a little bit for her birthday. So she said, "Hey, I want some sushi." So we just picked this place, Yakitori Jinbei, and we walk in, man. And we got the full, just amazing treatment because one, they saw my tripod. So when they saw my tripod, Walker, they instantly went into like, this guy must be like some kind of food blogger or some kind of influencer or something like that. Who are you, Jamison? And I'm like, I'm a podcaster, right? And, so we sit down and just the food was amazing. The creativity was there. They had this sort of like Japanese street food. They call it a pancake, but it's like a fritter. and it had these shaved, dried pieces of tuna on top,
Hmm.
and the heat from the pancake made the flakes on the top of the pancake dance. And so, so no lie, man. So you're
That's
sitting there
crazy.
yeah, it looked kind of freaky, man. And so we're sitting there watching this, and we're like, man, like his stuff dancing on the plate, like and not to spoil the whole episode because I want people to definitely listen to it if they get a
Sure.
chance. But
Yeah.
it's just that level of creativity. The food that dish alone was amazing. It just was amazing food, and so it's just about flavor, creativity, the decor, and then like you said, the value. And once you if you hit it out of the park in all those different ways, it's going to be amazing. The thing that sort of was reflected in Big Nick's review was just that it's just not a restaurant that you would go to and think of as like the top tier restaurant.
Okay.
You know what I mean? It just wasn't. Like a place like Cooper's Hawk, to give you an idea, that place would probably come in around 4 bites at least. That's where I'm kind of leaning to.
Okay.
And based on the food I had there, I'll probably give you about 4.5 bites, And but that's kind of like just give you an idea of what it takes to get into that range of 5 bites.
Yeah. Yeah. I was just curious because I've never really done, restaurant reviews or anything like that at all. So I'm no expert. Um, but yeah, I just thought that was interesting. Like I said, was just curious. I'm definitely, a cheap dude. So I'm, I'm looking for value probably more than other things. Now, creativity and all that stuff is cool too. And the
Sure.
service, but I don't know if you remember the episode of Seinfeld from back in the day, the soup Nazi.
Yes, the soup
Um,
Nazi. No soup
like
for you.
yeah, like I could be good with that because if the food is good enough and we can get in and out in this line and I don't have to stay here for a long time,
Hmm.
I don't really care if we're friends at the end, Mr. Soup Nazi. You know what I mean? Like
Exactly.
I'm
We
just
don't,
here for some grub.
that's it. We don't have to be that. We don't have to be that cozy. So
Right, right. But well, that's cool. Yeah, well definitely. I just wanted to kind of highlight those different episode types that you have because there's just so much content that you've got in culture and conversations. Like, again, those mainline episodes, and then you've got these kind of subcategories, and there's just a lot of interesting stuff there for people to consume. So, yeah, I just wanted to kind of highlight that.
well, I'll tell you one more show just briefly here as we
Yeah.
as we wrap up talking about the show, at least the show categories. So what happened was, so I started a Facebook page because that's where my largest following is at. And you have to create a Facebook page when you have a podcast. It's just part of the game. You have to have social media presence.
Mm-hmm.
And what happened was I said, well, people are going to join this Facebook page, and I've got to give them a reason for hanging around the Facebook page. And that's kind of how social media works with these algorithms. You got to kind of give people reasons to engage your content and hang around there. And what happened was I said, well, I had another buddy. Let me shout him out too. I had another buddy named his name is Kelvin KB Bivens. He goes by KB online, and he does the Words with KB podcast, which is a completely different style of podcast than what I do, right? And what we do, it's more raucous. It's more like a barbershop talk, if that's
Okay.
that's the right word, football locker room kind of talk.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Just give you an idea. Not necessarily always some of the negatives or the toxic masculinity stuff, but just a male friendly space, right?
Sure.
And he was instrumental in me starting my podcast as well, because he was encouraging, and he also was talking a lot about streaming. He was like, because he does it now for the gaming stuff he does, and he was actually on my show too on episode. He was on episode 3, King Birdie. And he talks about esports and how he got into playing, competitive video gaming, and excuse me, how he got into playing competitive video gaming. And so he started talking about streaming. So anyway, long story short, I started investigating how to stream and how to do a live show and use my webcams and lighting and all this stuff. And I said, well, I'll put that stuff on Facebook, and that'll give people a reason to hang around Facebook and consume that kind of content. Because I was like, if you're going to be on Facebook, I want a chance to market my show to you,
Mm-hmm.
but I don't want to just milk that channel just being purely, hey, listen to the show, right?
Mm-hmm.
And lo and behold, sure enough, we got a great following over there. It's a young fledgling following, so we still would love for people to go over there and listen to the videos and watch the videos. But I created a show called #The Group Chat, and it is the weekly live stream of the Culture and Conversations podcast, and it comes on every Thursday night, Eastern. I guess it's Eastern Standard Time or Eastern Daylight Time at 9:30 p.m. And also, we've added a Sunday show because people said that the 9:30 show on Thursday nights were a little too late. So I said, okay, well, we do one on Sunday night as well, 7 p.m. Eastern Daylight Time or Eastern Standard Time.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it's been great. It's been great. And, you know, we talk about things that I can't talk about on my podcast, the actual audio podcast. And it's a different experience, right? Because what I'm trying to do there is I'm trying to, talk about current events, current topics that come across my social media timeline. And at the same time, I'm trying to find ways to engage the audience that I'm hoping will listen to Culture and Conversations, the audio podcast. But at the same time, I'm fine with just people listening to either the hashtag the group chat, or they just listen to Culture and Conversations. But because I feel like it's all culture and conversations at the end of the day.
Sure. Yeah. No, that makes sense. So yeah, even more content beyond that. You've got the live stream that's a totally different vibe than those other things. So
Yeah.
super cool. I have not committed to doing a live stream thing yet. I'm still a little timid. I have started inviting people to email me, which hasn't happened except that just before we started recording, part of our little candid conversation you were talking about, you told me that you actually have been getting bounce backs when you send me emails. So I don't know if other people have been sending. That's what I'm going to think. I'm going to assume that I've got
Look,
dozens of emails that are in there that just haven't been able to get through because Google's holding me down. So
that's it. You got to be careful about those free emails, man. Like you got to pay your bill on that free email there.
Well, that's actually why it's disappointing, because that is actually a paid for email. So that is, yeah, because it's at the walkshowpodcast.com. So I actually had to pay for the domain email for that through Google. So
nice.
I'll look into that when we're done here. But so just a little more about you. So from what I understand, you live in the larger Atlanta metro area. Is that correct?
That's correct. I mean, I don't put out the exact city just because of what nature of what I do, but yeah, I live in the Atlanta metro area. So
okay. And are you from there originally?
No, I grew up in South Georgia, down near the city of Valdosta, Georgia, which is why I was down there eating at Big Nick's. I'm originally from a town called Morven, Georgia, Morven.
Okay.
And it has about 700 people in it. And at the height of me growing up there, it was around almost 1,000 people. So it was a really small town.
Yep. My sister lives in a town that's about that size, and I've got a nephew and two nieces that grew up there, and they're all in college age or a little bit older than that now. But
okay.
So yeah, I'm familiar with the small towns. I've personally lived in Springfield, Missouri my whole life, so not quite as adventurous as you, but same state the whole time, which is what you did. So
yeah.
And then I heard you mention in one of your episodes you talked about going to college. I assume that was for software engineering, or was there anything else there?
No, it was computer science. Yeah. I am a proud graduate of the mighty Georgia Southern University, Hail Southern, and no place else. That's what we say there. And it was over in Statesboro, Georgia. I went there from 2001 and graduated in 2005, and got a bachelor's in science and computer science. Yeah.
Cool. So as far as like hobbies and stuff, what about sports? You into sports at all?
Oh man, so I don't play sports. Even though I do a little bit of bowling. Not not terribly competitive. I used to bowl in like a lunch league. And kind of got decent doing that. I try to work out just for the health stuff, trying to lose a little bit of weight. Well, trying to lose a lot of weight. and you're always doing that stuff, and trying to keep up the health. Gardening was a hobby. I paint as well. I do some painting. And I'm about to start back writing poetry at
Oh,
some point.
cool.
Yeah. I feel like I need to talk about that time I went through when I was going through my divorce, and I feel like
Hmm.
that's one of those markers in my life that I think I can explore and help people with in some way. And also, I'm single, so ladies, if you're out there and you want to know more about this guy named Jamison Smallwood, then feel free to reach out to me, cultureandconversations@gmail.com. But I'm also at that time in my life where I'm single and I have, how I look at relationships now, Walker, versus how I looked at them in my 20s, and definitely how I looked at them as a teenager. I feel like that journey and that shift in perspective needs to be explored. Not to be too artsy right now, but I think as we get older, one of the most disappointing things that has to happen is that you lose a certain level of naivete,
Hmm.
and there's a certain romance to being naive, right? Like,
Hmm.
just the whole idea that you can meet somebody and fall in love, and it's just going to be blissful and perfect. Like relationships rob you of that. Relationships rob you of that pretty quickly once you get
Yeah.
into the nitty gritty of it.
Yep.
And it's kind of sad because you start seeing people, and they're amazing people, they're wonderful people, and then you pause and you say, well, I don't know. I don't know if I'll be bothered with this. I bet she snores, you start thinking about all kinds of things, man. I bet she, just the things that you use to talk yourself out of pursuing it.
Right.
And that loss of naivete, man, of just, hey, I want to try and see what happens. Let's see what happens. Like it just, that's the saddest part. And I kind of want to explore that. And I wonder, and a question in my writing I think I'm going to explore is, can you find the potential of life without that naivete? Is life still beautiful enough to enchant you into trying things once you've got enough experience to know how bad things can go, if that makes sense?
Hmm. Hmm.
You know.
Yeah. No, it does, and I think that sounds really interesting. I've got a buddy of mine who's I've been best friends with since we were like 6 years old. So, known him for the whole time, and he actually has a master's degree in creative writing with a focus on poetry. I don't know
Oh
if it's in
wow.
poetry or what, but yeah. So I've gotten exposure to him. He's published over a dozen times, and um, it's just his passion. It's his thing. He's super good at it, and so I it's funny because before he got into that, which he didn't get into that until he was in his late 20s. I never thought anything of poetry. I mean, I didn't hate it or something, but it was never anything I really gave a second thought to. And then after watching him kind of go through this whole journey of learning how to write poetry and what makes a poem good or not, and kind of what you're shooting for, and just all the infinite varieties of it that there are. It's actually a really fascinating subject. So I think that's super cool, that you're looking at that. And I will offer, and certainly you do not have to take me up on this, but if you ever wanted someone to look over one of your poems, not from a content standpoint, but just from like a structure standpoint, I'm sure you could send it over to me and I could have him look at it and he could give you some feedback. He's taught
Oh
master's
wow.
level courses at it and stuff. So he's a good one. But yeah, that's super cool. And you're right that whole when it comes to relationships, the naivety or whatever that you're talking about getting stolen away, or the innocence
Yeah,
to
that's a
some
better word,
extent.
probably innocence. Yeah.
Yeah, it is true, and it's true in so many things. And I was someone who, when I was in high school, I had the high school sweetheart, and we dated for, I don't know, 4 or 5 years or something.
Hmm.
Out of high school for a couple of years, and I remember being 19 or 20 and thinking like, oh well, I guess now I'm supposed to get engaged because I've been with the same person for 5 years, and so
Sure.
now that's the next step. And I remember going to look at rings, and I'm lucky that my cheapness showed up because I did not buy one. And I was like,
Okay.
damn, they're that much. But
Yeah, yeah, they get ridiculous.
yeah. But anyway, and you know, and then obviously probably it didn't work out and we didn't stay together. And as I've gotten farther from that, like I'm so glad that that happened that way. And not because she was a horrible person or anything like that, just because I was just a kid. So what I thought it all meant was wrong, you
Yeah,
know,
exactly.
and so so I think that's true. And what I would say to you though, and this is not advice you asked for, so not advice you have to
Hey
take,
man,
but
I welcome it because it's free.
the advice, yeah, right. That's why you should be hesitant when accepting it. But what I would say is you should think about the garden profound thought that you had, and that it's probably not going to be perfect, but
Ah,
that's also the reason that it's not toxic, right? Because there's a
ah.
little room there. So
I see
I
what
don't
you did
know.
there. I see what you did
Yeah.
there. I
Hey,
like
I'm
that.
just
I like
hey,
that.
you know,
Yeah.
I'm telling you, man, that's a good insight, and it applies to so much. And yeah, so there, I flipped it on you.
Well,
Um,
I appreciate that. I mean, that gives me a perspective on it, and going for what you want and not expecting perfection. Your reflections on Kobe Bryant and Roy Shack
yeah,
from from what
the
is it?
Watchmen.
The Watchmen, yeah.
Hmm.
Really, really good stuff because I love that archetype in literature, in anime, in film, in sports, in
Hmm.
life, that the like you described it, the person who goes after what they want at all costs, the singular focus, the driven nature of
Hmm.
hyper competitiveness, and just buying into a philosophy so deeply that you're like nothing else matters. That
Hmm.
tunnel vision, and because that relates to me a lot. That's part of I think that's part of what's been behind the spirit of culture and conversations, at least the regularity, the long nights of editing content and reshooting content and getting stuff edited down. And it just really spoke to me as well. And it teaches you about perseverance. I think that mindset of that you articulated in that episode was really good because when you podcast, when you do anything entrepreneurial where you're just trying to create something, you're not sure what it's going to be yet, whether it's even in a relationship too, you've got to persevere. And, that perseverance is a good thing. But you also, what you described too, is that there is a little bit of a cautionary tale there too about going after what you want at all costs, because that can be problematic when what you're going after isn't good or the
Right,
or the
right.
path is just so bad. So there's always a balance there, and I really appreciated that insight from your show, and it gave me a lot of really good things to think about, and how to kind of fold that into how I approach some of the things that I'm working on in life. So I'll take both of those pieces of advice you gave me, and directly, indirectly, and I will definitely apply them.
Yeah, well, it's just it's so fascinating to me how often you can know something and then have to relearn it again, and
Yeah,
not even because you made a mistake sometimes. Like, for example, the job that I have currently, it's for a computer software company, but the reason I have it is not because I'm not a computer engineer, and I don't do that work there either. But anyway,
hmm,
I was underqualified when I got hired there. The reason I got hired there is because of the people that I know.
sure, sure,
And there was 10 guys that I had worked with before, and they all vouched for me, and so I got hired. Um, when I went to Podfest in Orlando that we talked about at the beginning of the episode,
hmm,
I thought that the value that I was really going to get was going to conference rooms, taking notes, and learning, consuming the content, the information.
sure,
And I did all that, and it was good. But the real value, the highest value thing I got out of it was the relationship with people like yourself and a handful of other people that I got to spend, a lot of time with. And it's like, well, I already knew that. I knew that
hmm,
from my own career. I know that, for lack of a better word, nepotism is really the way that the world works.
that's
And
true.
then I just had to relearn that lesson again. So um, just like my point just being that, like, just like you might understand that, everything that has to be perfect in the garden, you can apply that to some situations. maybe when trying to find a partner, it's not obvious. And just like when I talked about perception dictating reality,
Hmm.
I've used it to deal with some personal things. There's other situations though where I haven't been able to shift my perception, but I know
Hmm.
the lesson, but I
Yeah.
just don't see it sometimes. So
Yeah.
it's
Even
interesting.
yeah, I mean that's true. I mean that's true. I think so much. Like I said, I am a person of faith. I think so much of what Jesus taught, in the scriptures that we have about his life, it revolved around shifting that perception and just seeing things different from a different angle, from a different vantage point. So I mean, you're right that those lessons are oftentimes so ingrained into various aspects of our existence, and we just have to kind of go through it again and again to get it understood because we know it, like you said, we know it and we've learned
Hmm.
it. But then this moment is a new opportunity to apply it, and that's where it goes from us translating knowledge into actual substance. And I think that's always a journey there, and it's one that you have to just sometimes repeat over and over again.
Right, right. Yeah. No, that's very true. So a couple more questions that they can be kind of quick hitters if you want them to be, but I'm just
Hey
curious
man, I
just
got
to kind of know you.
it's your platform, dude. I'm gonna just so you know, I'm gonna take this episode that I record with you because I got my recorder running,
Okay.
and I'm gonna throw it up on my on my feed when it's all said and done. So this is another
Cool.
episode. You have me get an episode done here.
Cool. Cool. So uh we talked about sports a little bit. Do you do any gaming at all? I know you said you have a buddy that streams on Twitch. Do you do any gaming at all?
I haven't played games in a long time. I've just been, I guess, just too busy. I have a console. I have an old console. I have an Xbox 360.
Okay.
But I haven't played much games.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah, that if you find yourself going through the the backlog of my show, the short one that exists, I definitely talk about games quite a bit. It's probably my primary hobby.
Hmm.
It's it's just something that I started doing with my dad when I was a little kid and just kind of went for it from there, and I don't know,
Hmm.
just always stuck with me.
Well, I tell you, I am looking at getting a PlayStation, kind of like a throwback PlayStation console,
Hmm.
and the one that has like all those preloaded games,
Right,
and
right.
they have Final Fantasy VII preloaded
Yeah,
on the console. And depending on your viewpoint about RPGs, Final
love
Fantasy
them.
VII is considered like one of the greatest RPGs ever made.
Yep.
And I bought Final Fantasy VIII as a kid or as a teenager, and I beat it, which is an awesome experience. That game was I don't even say it was life changing, but it was pretty. It was just a masterful experience. And I was like, if this isn't better than seven, I've got to play seven.
Right. Yeah, you do,
So
man.
so
7, 10 is really good also.
yeah,
Um,
okay, okay.
but yeah, you're in for a treat with those. Um, well, cool. And then, so what about music? As far as music goes, what kind of music do you find yourself listening to?
Oh man, I'm really an old soul when it comes to music, Walker. I love listening to stuff from like the '60s and the '70s in terms of R&B, like the Temptations.
Mm,
I love listening to things like Harold Melvin and the Blue Notes, Teddy Pendergrass, Isaac Hayes, just anything from that generation of music. There's some people in the '80s I enjoy listening to. Like the Gap Band, Charlie Wilson. But at the same time too, I'm just all over the place, man. I really enjoy Ed Sheeran. I love his stuff.
yeah.
I like old John Mayer before John Mayer
Okay.
before he got all the tattoos. I like his I like Neon, just the acoustics and the
Yep.
acoustic guitar and him singing. One of my favorite experiences around that was just sharing with your audience how I look at the world. I had a chance to go to a summer program when I was in high school, and it was my first time meeting a person who was Jewish, and my roommate was Jewish, and so not only was that a great learning experience about other cultures, just opening my mind up to like other people and how they live and just getting outside of my bubble, my South Georgia bubble, right?
Hmm.
But he was one of the things we did was we sat down and we just kind of talked about music. So I put my music on that I liked, and from my cultural perspective, and he put on his music. And John Mayer, he was always big on John Mayer because because my roommate's last name was Mayer, so so John and him had the exact same last name. And so when he started playing John Mayer, I was like, okay, I'm rocking with this, I'm rocking with this, I'm rocking with this, and it just stuck. And it was it was a great life lesson for me about just being open minded to other people and their perspectives and culture, and it gave
Mm-hmm.
me a chance to kind of grow and grow into this wonderful just grow into this wonderful world of music through that experience. Who else you asked me about more music? So also I love me some jazz. So
Okay.
Miles Davis, Duke Ellington. Yeah. So I mean, I listen to the pop stuff too, like Drake and who else? Drake and I'm trying to
Little
think of
Wayne maybe or
yeah,
something.
yeah, Lil Wayne. Grew up on a lot of Southern hip hop, so I
Yep.
was, I was here for that whole boom. I saw growing up in the South. I saw the whole shift from New York, dominated hip hop, and West Coast dominated hip hop, to sort of swinging down to where Atlanta has become the hub and the mecca for hip hop. So. I saw all of that and saw that transition. So that I love all music. If it has a message to it, and the message could just be something silly like, get money and have fun,
Right.
that I can rock with it, usually.
Right.
So
Yeah, for me, music is yeah, I don't like I'm not a I don't I'm not a musician at all. And when I listen to music, I struggle to identify what instrument is what, or what different parts of the song are appropriately called. Is that the beat or is that the melody?
nah, I got
I
you.
never know. Um, but I mean, I listen to music. I don't know, probably a minimum of 6 hours a day, and on some days it's every waking minute almost. I love
Wow.
listening to music. I just have headphones on all the time, or in, or just at my house, speakers on, whatever. Um, and for me, what's always been true for music is that it just it's just the sound, like the sound of the song,
Hmm.
whatever that may be, just has to grab me. And it doesn't really matter. I don't really care what it's called. I don't care how long it is. I don't care what genre it is. I don't care what the lyrics are. It has to grab me. And then once it's done that, then I can explore the rest of it and get into it. But like there's one of my favorite artists of all time is Tupac.
Oh
On the
yeah.
other end of the spectrum, one of my favorite artists is Tool.
Okay.
Uh, and then I listen to Massive Attack, which is like electronic music. I listen to this guy that you should totally check out if you like that old school John Mayer. His name is Jose Gonzalez,
Okay.
and he's actually a Swedish, despite that name, singer songwriter. But yeah, he's more like the old school John Mayer, like acoustic, whatever. So that doesn't sound anything like Tool, and that doesn't sound anything like Tupac.
Hmm.
But it's just there's like a feeling or like a vibe with it that grabs me. And yeah, I don't know. I music is one of those things though that just whatever my emotional state, I can always find a song that taps into that and just feels like it enhances it. So yeah, well,
That's
thank
awesome.
you for sharing your music. Like I just always find it interesting to see what people are into. I used to be a huge douchebag about it, for lack of a better term, where I would ask you what music you liked, and if you didn't say Tool, then I would start hating on what you liked because you didn't say Tool. So
You would think I'm a tool for not liking Tool. I got you.
yeah, and it turns out I was the tool. So if anyone that's listening remembers that, I again am sorry. I've apologized before, but it was insufferable.
Oh man,
Um,
it happens, man. I've been
eh,
very passionate about some things that just didn't matter in life. So I totally get it, man.
yeah. Um, well, Jameson, I really, really appreciate you taking the time to join the show today. I hope that we can get together again. I'd love to have you back as a guest sometime. This has been a real blast and a real treat to have you on.
Oh, dude, man, this has been wonderful, man. Like I said, you helped me, one, meet your audience. So shout out to those people who are fans of the Walk Show. And also, man, I hope people will, just hear this episode and get a better sense for what I'm doing over at Culture and Conversations. And, if you guys want to reach out to me, man, you can hit me up on all that social media. Culture and Conversations is on Facebook and also Instagram. And the email address is cultureandconversations@gmail.com. So anytime, Walker, you want to get me back on and just talk, then, man, I'm down for it, man. And I can't wait for my audience to hear your voice because you have an amazing voice for a podcaster, man. People told me I have a good voice. I'm like, no, this guy Walker has an amazing voice for a podcast. So it's like watching butter melt on a hot, cinnamon roll, man. It's just, it's good stuff, man.
Oh, I cannot wait to play this line for my friends. Their stomachs will hurt just at the sound of me being complimented. So this will be great.
So yeah, we let's definitely collaborate, man, and maybe I can reach out to you. And I'm gonna take this episode obviously and put it on my show, but
cool.
But I would love to have you on and kind of do like my show with you, and
yeah, man.
That way that we can kind of double down and just help each other as you need people to kind of provide content, man. Hey. I'm always game, so.
Exactly, man. Well, again, thank you so much for tuning in. Again, everyone, it's Jamison Smallwood with Culture and Conversations. Thanks for listening, and have a good one. Well, that is all for today's show. Thank you so much for listening. Again, you can check out Culture and Conversations, which is Jamison's podcast. It's available on all the podcast networks. If you look in the show notes, there'll be links there as well. You can also get at him on Facebook where he does the live streams. Again, thank you so much for listening. Hope you enjoyed the show. Also, please feel free to email me any comments or questions at walker@thewalkshowpodcast.com. I'll also link that email in the show notes. Thanks again. Have a good one.